What does she just want to be a princess, I guess?
She wants to be president.
She was a princess.
She wants to run for president.
Oh, she does?
She does. She has aspirations of presidential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's going to be, by the time she gets to the point where she could, AOC will already have taken the spot that she's after. I really think AOC is going to run at some point.
I'm really excited for an AOC presidency, though.
Why is that?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be like being at a circus. You know, it's going to be like trapeze. There's going to be clown cars crashing into walls. Like, and then we're going to be sitting there. Like, the news is going to be crazy.
It's going to be great, and they're going to be telling you how great she's doing. As you know,
things are on fire. Yeah.
She's going to be standing there with a smile on her face. People behind her are like screaming, and there's like,
please disperse. Nothing to see here.
It'll really end up being like the Hunger Games, really, where like the people that are in District 1 in DC in the area are doing very, very well, and they're vomiting so they can keep gorging themselves.
You know what I love?
The rest of the country is going to be falling apart.
What people don't understand is, like, I don't know if you heard the quote from Greta Thunberg where she was like, we don't want to wait till 2030. No, she's like, we don't want to wait till 2050 or 2030 or not even 2021. We want it now. We want to end these investments and subsidies. It's like, all
right, Veruca Salt.
20 million people will die overnight.
Yeah,
because like we transport food into areas that have no food. Could you imagine if they got rid of fossil fuels? Like the Antarctic researchers would just die, just like instantly they would just die.
If only like the ghost of Christmas future could come and grab all the socialists and be like, if we implemented all of your stuff, this is the future that you get. You know,
that'd be great.
Just get where's that ghost of Christmas future to come and show everybody what the future would be like if they got what they wanted.
I think it's because, going back to the conversation we were having about not, poor people being kind of well off, but there's weird distribution issues.
Yeah.
You've got these people that spent their whole life with everything handed to them. And we're at this point now where we're so well off, there's almost no struggle. Even when you're poor, you got food, you got air conditioning, you got clean water, you got a hot bath. And that's poverty level in this country. I'm not saying life is good for them relative to where it is for the middle class, but relative to people 100 years ago, it's living like kings. And so what happens is, if you can't clean yourself, and if you have dirty water, you live in the middle of nowhere, you drink from a well, you get infections, you get parasites, you get sick. Life is a struggle.
Yep.
Now we're at a point where even our lower middle class are living very, very well relatively. And so based on survivability standards, which would be universal, not predicated upon the success of our country, they're kings. And so they grow up with their bare necessities almost essentially met. Everything's handed to them. They go to school. They're told what to do. They get a job. Finally they go through college, high school, whatever. They get their degrees, and they're told to do the entire time. They have no understanding about resource distribution. They've probably never even grown a plant. They have no idea where their food comes from.
Yeah.
So they're just like, I wake up and there's food. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna tell you a joke. This is a really funny sketch where this apartment's all messy, and this guy's girlfriend comes in, and she wakes up her boyfriend, and she's like, you need to clean this mess up. And he goes, wait, let me show you something. And he puts the garbage on top of the coffee table, and he goes, now all we have to do is go to sleep, and we wake up, it'll be gone. And then she's like, are you kidding me? Because she's the one who's cleaning all the trash. That's kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
They just wake up one day, they walk in the cafeteria, and there's food.
Oh.
Well, I don't know where it came from.
I would add also, unemployment is very strange. I've been on unemployment. I don't know if you guys have ever been on unemployment before. But you lose your job, you sign up, you start getting a check, $500 a week or whatever. But if you get a job that's going to pay you $400 a week, you lose your $500 a week.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's incentivizing you to not get a job.
Yep.
And these are the people now that are out there. They're probably on unemployment because of COVID. A lot of people encouraged to not get a job.
It's worse than that. When I was on unemployment, I worked a job that was essentially sales. It was fundraising, and so it was commission based. But that meant that the unemployment I was eligible for was dramatically lower than what I actually earned on average. And so when I was on the phone with the woman, she said, have you looked for work? And I said, I have. And I was like, I have a question though, because there are jobs I could get, but they pay so much less than what I used to make. And like, I'm getting paid well. And she goes, no, stop. Don't take a job that pays you less. Stay on unemployment. And I was like, why?
What?
And she said, when we get people who take a job that pays less than their unemployment, they quit the job, they lose the job, you need to make sure you can maintain your standard of living. Otherwise, you'll be back on unemployment. That's actually a good point. If you have a base requirement, if you have a car payment and a mortgage or a rent or whatever, and your unemployment's covering it, and you find a job that will pay you, but it pays less than your necessities, she was basically saying we can't have that because then you'll be homeless, you'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that still creates this problem where it's like, okay, I'll stand on unemployment, I won't take the job, and
I feel like
what do you do?
I feel like Milton Friedman talked about that kind of stuff. I'm not super well read on Austrian economics and stuff, but that's something that libertarians do talk about. Is when you have government provided safety nets and stuff. If you're making $500 a week from the government, then you're not going to get a job for $450 or for $400.
A better way to put it is that it creates a tendency.
Yep.
Maybe most people would say I'd rather work because work is fulfilling, but maybe just enough people get trapped, and then you create a trap where you gradually catch more and more people, and it gets worse and worse and worse.
I think that's the biggest problem, is the fact that it becomes a trap where people, if you're getting $500 a week to start something on your own, that's actually above board, that you're going to be, unless you're doing like a side hustle that you're not telling the government about. But like, if you're going to start something on your own, then people get used to making a certain amount of money. So even if you can cut back and survive on 400, there's not a whole lot of incentive to do that.
Right.
Just to get off the government handout.
So what do you think about UBI, Universal Basic Income?
Again, that's something that Milton Friedman had talked about, and there is a libertarian argument. If it gets rid of all other entitlements,
yes,
it's something that I think that may be worth talking about. But
that was Yang's position.
Yeah. I didn't hate on Yang at all.
I liked him. I think UBI, I'm not a big fan of it, but I thought he has a very comprehensive policy across the board.
I like him except for the fact that he was a Democrat. And it's not because there's anything wrong with Democrats. It's because of the official DNC party. It's not that he's a Democrat and has would like Democrat policies. It's because I believe the DNC official is corrupt and bad.
I can give you one simple reason why you don't vote for Democrats. You can get a moderate Democrat to come out and say, I agree with everything you said 100%, and I will put forth bills and I will agree on all of those things. And guess what? When Nancy Pelosi says we're impeaching Trump, they go, okay.
Yeah.
So you're empowering Pelosi and Schumer. And I look at these moderate Democrats who won in 2018. And the meme idea I like to use is the Lord of the Rings, cast it into the flames. You've got Isildur holding the one ring, and it says Orange Man bad. And they promised they would cast it into the fires if you just got them to Mount Doom.
Yeah.
And then once they were there, the moderates yelled, cast it into the flames, and no. And they walked out and they went to impeach Trump.
The Orange Man is bad. It's such an idiotic. God,
it's awful.
So So that's when I was like, you know what? You can't vote for him. Even if you do like, I really liked Yang and I really liked Tulsi, and I don't agree with everything Tulsi has on her, in terms of her policy positions.
Yeah.
Or Yang either. When it comes to UBI specifically, I just thought Yang had like the most comprehensive list of plans that I've seen in a long time.
I'm a big 2A supporter. And that for me is
they were both gun control.
They're both bad.
And I've flipped on that completely.
Yeah.
Because of the riots.
Yeah. And I've always been kind of a pro 2A guy, but the fact that there's so many people that are, purchasing guns, and I don't know if you've tried to buy ammo, but it's a nightmare.
Oh man, it's
not
gone.
possible.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Gone. And I've taken, I go to classes every single year. I'm one of those guys that's like, if I talk about guns, I try to go down the 4 basic firearm safety rules, and I really advocate people getting out and training, and I put up video of me training so that way people see that I'm not just talking about it, which I think there are too many people that do that, like I actually walking the walk. And if you could give me a Democrat that would just say, you know what, I think that the Second Amendment means what it says, and that's something that I'm really not going to worry about. I'm not pro gun control. I could look at Democrats completely different if they, if there was someone that was like, oh, the Second Amendment means what it says. But
did you ever read the original text of the first draft of the Second Amendment?
I don't know. Maybe not. I know that there were multiple drafts and there were different places that they put commas and stuff like that.
So let me see if I can find it. So I think it's in Wikipedia. Maybe we can't. United States Bill of Rights. I don't know if I'm able to find it actually, but there were 17 before.
We should get those printed up and put on the wall.
That would
The
be
original,
really
the
neat.
original 17. It was like the 17 articles. I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it in this because.
Do you want to Google? Do you want to search it?
No,
Paige?
no, it's on Wikipedia and it's a list. But I'll just tell you. Basically, the original text specifically said that a person who doesn't want to join the armed forces still has the right to bear arms.
Oh, really?
They got rid of it, I think, because they were worried that it would ban conscription or something like that.
Yeah.
But right now, one of the big arguments we see from the left is a well-regulated militia. The government's supposed to regulate it, and it's like that's not what they meant.
That's not what.
And the original text said something like, "This will not be." I don't have the exact language pulled up, but it was something like, "A person who refuses military service, still retains their right to bear arms."
Yeah.
Because what they were trying to make sure of, just because someone wasn't going to be in a militia, they can still have a gun.
Yeah. The idea that considering the Constitution is a document that expressly gives power to the government, and then the Bill of Rights is a list of things specifically off limits to the federal government. If you take the context, if you look at it from that context, there's no prior restraint or no prior limitation to what a person is allowed to own. And I hear some people arguing that the DC versus Heller case created a freedom or something like that.
What's the case?
The DC versus Heller case is about whether an individual has a right to own a gun for personal protection. And the court found yes, the individual does have a protected right to own a gun for personal protection. And it's fairly simple. The people that find an issue with gun control or find an issue with the Second Amendment and that are pro-gun control, the way that they approach it is that the government has the authority to give you rights, and your rights come from your humanity. The government doesn't have the ability to give you a right. They can give you an entitlement. So the right to health care is actually an entitlement to the government paying for your health care.
To the people.
Yeah.
Not because the people have to supply the resources and the labor.
Exactly. So, but that brings in the argument of positive versus negative rights, and I don't think positive rights are actually rights.
They're
I think
not really rights.
Yeah. Negative rights are the only rights that can.
This is
because you've talked about going out in the woods, and you have the right. You can say whatever you want in the woods because you can say it, and no one can stop you. You can you can take a stick and turn it into a weapon to because no one can stop you. But the actual having to do something for someone else is where the problem.
So so the way I usually explain it is, if you want to figure out what your rights are, strip naked and go in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
Anything you can do is your right to do.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You can defend yourself. You can create a weapon. You can scream all you want, and you're naked. You can take a dump. Once you start imposing on other people, like taking a dump in their water, you got problems. But so there's no doctor. You have a right to health care? Oh, okay. Yell at the grizzly. See if he'll come fix your wound. It's not going to happen. I was reading about positive and negative rights, and the easiest way to explain it is that a negative right to life means I can't kill you. We all have that in this country. A positive right to life means that if Ian tries to kill you, I'm obligated to save you. Or if you're dying or injured, I'm obligated to save you. I must do something. That's not a right. You have no right to someone else's life. And I think that's the big difference between authoritarian and libertarian.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say it's one of the. I should say it's one of the big differences. When they say healthcare is a human right, what they're saying is the labor of a class of people belongs to the people.
Yeah.
It's socialist. It's not a human right. You can't force someone to do anything.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? You're going to go to a hospital and be like, I try asking my lefty friends this. They have no answer, and they just kind of just dance around it because they can't. If healthcare is a human right, what would happen what would you do if you went to a hospital and the doctor said, I refuse to treat this person? Do you just point a gun at them and say, do it or else? What do you do if they say no?
You're in a position where you can't do anything without violating their rights.
Yeah.
You can't force someone to do something without violating their innate right to say, I don't want to.
Maybe the NPC people just have no individuality, and so they don't care to lose it.
Right, when it comes to rights, I think people should have a human right to the internet right now because it's technologically simple So if medicine was simple, if it didn't take you or any other person, if I could walk into like a DNA replicator that would just heal my body back to full, then everyone should have a right to that, I think.
I think could. Good.
No, I was going to say, yeah. In the world where we have post-scarcity technology and everyone can be healed,
it's totally different argument.
Right.
Yeah,
it's totally different.
So like a right to the internet now, because electricity is so free and cheap for the most part, that we can gain new rights, basic human rights, I think.
I don't know. I think that I disagree. And I think the reason I disagree is because to have a right to the internet would imply that you have a right to a connection to the internet that has to be built by people.
Maintained by people.
Maintained by people.
Electricity.
There's a lot of things that go into it. You have the right to access the internet.
Yes.
So you have the right to access healthcare. You have the right to access a gun to defend your life. The right to defend your life is innate, regardless of whether or not you have a gun.
I'll tell you what, man.
If I jump across here and I attack you, right? You have the right to defend yourself empty-handed, right?
Yeah.
If you had a gun on you and I was threatening your life, you have the right to use that gun to defend your life. It's the defending of your life that's the right. And then the protection afforded you in the Second Amendment is that the government cannot prevent you from using a tool or whatever tool you find best will help you defend your life. So the Second Amendment covers knives, it covers nunchucks, it covers bows and arrows, it covers anything that's a weapon. That's
it
why
covers
it's
warships.
It does cover warships with cannons.
I love this argument from the left that they're like they expect you to have a musket. I don't know if you've ever seen this commercial where an angry guy storms into an office and then he aims the musket and fires and then starts, he puts the gunpowder in and starts stuffing it. Everyone runs away. And they're like, this is what the founding fathers were talking about. And I'm like, dude, corsairs and privateers were a whole part of this thing for hundreds of years. You had dudes who privately owned warships that would sink government vessels. Second Amendment covers everything, dude.
I want tanks.
Yes, me too.
Well, tanks are legal.
Yes, they are.
Tanks are legal.
Yeah.
And I remember there was some guy who tweeted, you can't own a tank, dude. And then it was actually this it was a lefty, like a progressive, who was like, actually. And they wrote a story about a dude who owned a tank and was firing a full auto 50 cal into a lake on his property. And the police got a call because they hear doo, 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 doo. The cops pull up, and they see this guy in a tank into his lake. And then he stops and he takes his headphones off or whatever, and he waves, and they're like, "This your property?" And he goes, "Yeah." And they were like, "Carry on, sir." And that was it. Like, it's not legal. Like,
be like,
checking
man,
on you.
What are you blowing all that money for?
Come on, man.
I'll tell you what, though. I got good news for you. Now that the progressives have shifted the argument from negative to positive, healthcare being a human right, if we have a right to access something, if our rights are positive, then the government is obligated to give us all guns.
I know. You'd think. You'd think. If only it worked out that way.
You get a voucher, and then you go to the Department of Gun Services.
Yes.
And you show your voucher, and it's good for one long gun.
We all know how crappy that gun would be.
I know. That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I don't know a lot about guns, but it would probably jam all the time.
We can talk later. I know a lot about guns.
What's a really crappy gun you think the government would give if they had to give guns?
Well, I mean, if they had to give guns, they've got ARs now or M16s now, so I guess they would give those, but they probably wouldn't be in proper working order.
It would probably be a government manufactured, low quality, low caliber.
High points.
What is that?
It's garbage, and I'm sure there are people watching now that are like, yeah, that's what the government would give. The high point. It's but if it's the only gun you got, it's the only gun you got, man. I'm not trying to dog on the high point. Yeah, it is a gun. It is a gun.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, man, since the riots, you've got, I don't know, did you hear about this? A mass historical exodus of police in Seattle.
That's something that I think that I was kind of hoping that we would talk about is I think that there's going to be a significant increase in violence in cities all over the country because cops ain't having it. They're just like, man, you do you, you know?
Yep.
I'm afraid for what that means for your average person that just wants to go and live their life. But like, I'm not in any rush to see New York City look like it did in Taxi Driver.
In June.
In June.
Yeah.
Or just a couple months ago. Yeah, it's true.
Right.
It's true. I know people that live in New York that, you know, they're like, man, you know, there's some wild stuff going on, and you know, gunshots just hanging out in Brooklyn and stuff, and
it's worse than people know. I've been hearing some stories, man.
I'm sure that they're not publicized on big media, you know.
Check it out. If you're walking down the street in New York and someone punches you in the face, is that news?
If it's Rick Moranis, it is.
If it's Rick Moranis, it is news. For regular people, it's not.
No.
And I was just talking to some guys, and they were saying, like, in Minneapolis, and it was crazy. This guy was like, we were talking about crime and defunding the police, and then he just stops and goes, "Oh, hey, did you hear so-and-so got punched in the face?" And they're like, what? Just randomly punched in the face. It's like, wait. You know somebody's walking down the street, someone punched him in the face. Yeah. And that's not normal. No, it never happens. It's not news. New York Times not going to come out and be like, another woman was punched. But apparently attacks like this are happening in a bunch of these cities, and the cops don't care anymore. So in Seattle, I think the number is 118 have quit the force, and probably dozens more are doing blue flu, right, where they call in sick all the time, and they're using their leave until they can get close to retirement. So this is from KTTH 770 up in, I think it's in Seattle. I forgot the guy's name. Jason Rantz, maybe?
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah. And he was saying that they looked into it, they checked the numbers, and this is a historical exodus from the police department. Like, this number is ridiculously huge. And response times for 911 calls is up to 9 minutes. 9 minutes. So here's what I was thinking. If I'm going to be in a city where they tell me I can't have a gun, I can't protect myself, and then they're telling me the 911 is not going to be able to get to me for 10 minutes.
Leave the city.
Yeah.
What's that saying? When seconds matter, the cops are minutes away.
Yeah.
So I left the city.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in New York, and I lived on that street where that black supremacist killed those two cops, if you remember that story. And that was when I was like, oh, man, I probably shouldn't live here. I went down to Miami for a little bit. When I came back, I went to the Jersey side. Then someone planted bombs in Jersey City and in Manhattan. And that was crazy. And I was like, I really want to get away. Like, I can see the tensions escalating. So I moved to South Jersey. Now I'm in the suburbs on the other side of the river from Philly, which is not that big. And I'm like, everything's fine. And then the riots happened in June, and the helicopters were...
We could see them.
And the sirens, too. And I was like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. What is this? So now
You thought you were in the middle of nowhere.
Now we
relative for me growing up in Chicago, in the city, people, like, whenever I say I'm from Chicago, they're like, oh, which suburb? And I'm like, no, I was in the city. Yeah, so now, like, the suburbs are the middle of nowhere. No, not good enough. They crossed the bridge, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
They were purposefully coming. They actually came to my sleepy suburb town, and I got an email notification from people with, like, that Nextdoor app, and they were like, why are they coming here?
That was when that's when Carl came over and you guys were doing that.
No.
The event?
Yeah, that was last year.
Okay, last year.
I'm talking about the riots now that happened in June.
Okay.
Like, people were like, yo, why are they coming to our suburb for this?
Yeah.
Like, why? Same thing happened in Chicago. But yeah, the event I did with Sargon.
That was in southern Jersey?
So it was in southern Jersey. It was in Pittman. And this is hilarious because these Antifa people came from far away, from like Brunswick or whatever, from, half an hour north of... I lived there. Like, I literally lived about 5 miles from the theater. And they were like, we don't want these people coming to our town. And I was like, dude, you came to my town. I live here. I'm putting an event with my friends. And that was where they called Daryl Davis a white supremacist.
Yeah. God, what a ridiculous development. I could not believe it. Like, there are very few people that you can think of that have actually put more work into changing hearts and minds than Daryl Davis and some dumb, probably 20-year-old college kid who probably thinks Mao was all right, and then he's like I'm a Marxist Leninist, and Daryl Davis is a white supremacist, and it's
dude.
And he made a post about it.
Yeah.
So I think most people know who Daryl is, but he's de-radicalized like 200 plus Klansmen, and he's a black jazz musician. He's an amazing person. And he said he just wanted to talk to him to understand him, and that proximity and that friendship actually changed their minds and changed their worldview.
Is there not a better refutation of the idea that you should punch Nazis than Daryl Davis? You're not going to convince, like when nobody punched the Nazi out of Spencer that day he got sucker punched. They didn't punch the racism out of him. Didn't work at all. That man is just as racist as he was before he got punched.
With different tactics.
Yeah.
But Daryl Davis sits down and talks to people and Klansmen that, will actually wear that dumbass outfit in public, and he can talk them out of it. Did I just mess up by swearing? Is that
No,
a-
that was
No.
heartfelt.
you know? I mean, like, seriously, like, Daryl Davis talks people out of being Klansmen and befriends people that were racist.
Dude, his stories are amazing.
It's amazing.
Like that one story he has where he met this Klansman, and a lot of these guys just never actually met or interacted with a black person. And when he was talking to this guy, the guy was a big fan of rock and roll, and him being this musician who had access, he's like, I can show you this famous car. And this racist guy, this white supremacist, is like, you can actually get me. You can sit in the car. He's like, oh. And then he went there, and like I'm probably ruining Daryl's story, but it was like it was so like, man, I was welling up when I heard it. He brings this racist guy. He sees this car from this rock legend he's always dreamed of, and he gave Daryl a hug, and he was like that shattered that racism in a moment. He was like, this guy is like one of the coolest, nicest guys ever to help me do this.
Yeah.
Man, I love the stories so we did that event, and he told these stories, and it was just like he got a standing ovation.
Good for him.
But it wasn't this profound thing where he did this great deal of work where he's like writing down, trying to figure out what to say. He just sat down and said, "What up?"
Yeah.
And we talked.
He's just a person, you know?
And then it was simply the act of trying to communicate with them that allowed them to understand their racist views didn't make sense.
Yeah.
My favorite story was that he said, well, that was my favorite story, but in one of his stories he said that he was hanging out with this Klan member who stayed a Klan member until one day he was at a meeting. This Klan guy told him he was at a meeting, and he heard them saying all these things about black people, and then he stopped and thought, that's not like Daryl at all. This doesn't make sense anymore.
I love it.
And then he gave his robes to Daryl. That dude is amazing. Those stories are so cool.
Is it true that he collected a bunch of robes?
Yes.
That is the coolest. That is the coolest, like, scalping racist. Just taking seriously, that's what it is.
Taking
it's
souls,
just
man.
it's just scalping
Well, hold
racists
on.
and taking that away from him and being like, that's the coolest. You know?
They
I love
gave
it.
him their robes.
Yeah.
And then at his events, he brings them and he shows them off.
So cool.
And he says people often tell him to burn them and destroy them, and he was like,
way.
no,
No.
this
So
represents
cool.
someone leaving and the victory, and it's like it's like
Celebration.
capturing
Yeah.
the flag almost.
That's really
it's like
neat. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Capture the flag. Absolutely,
yeah.
man.
But it's I think it's important to show that like his approach in receiving these wasn't in any way adversarial.
Yeah.
He wasn't like, haha, now I've got your robe. He was like,
Punch him.
wow, I can't believe you've given this to me. That's tremendous. That's an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, Antifa's not convincing anyone.
They're really not.
No, they're not.
The kids that are out there that are getting into fights and stuff and you know, taking advantage. If you look at this is one thing that I saw. You look at the mug shots of the people in Portland.
Oh, man.
And Douglas Murray said recently on a podcast, he said, if you look at those mug shots, those are people in chaos.
Yep.
You can look at them and see they're probably some type of mentally ill, you know, some kind of something like that, you know, and so you've got people that are taking advantage of them and getting people that are probably probably mentally ill to go out and behave violently and act out, and they're being, you know, egged on by people that probably aren't mentally ill.
Yep.
And they're just using them.
That's exactly what I've been saying.
You know?
like the Joker.
Yeah.
In the Dark Knight.
Yep.
The paranoid schizophrenic, Two-Face is interrogating him. Batman's like, Joker preys upon paranoid schizophrenics like this.
That is so interesting and compassionate what Douglas is saying there, because I think that is consistent. I was looking at it, and I even asked some of my Twitter followers, I was like, is being this weird looking a cause or an effect of being in Antifa? And I think it is just a sign of chaos. I think the crazy hair color, I think the crazy eyes, I think they are a sign of chaos, and I think it's good and it's right to be a little bit compassionate
free
about
radicals.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
They don't really fit into any kind of culture. They're just kind of out there doing whatever. So I'll tell you what one of the things that scares me is there's something I call the scaling problem. So the way I explain it is, if Apple releases 100 iPhones to a bunch of celebrities and 1% of them breaks, one celebrity goes, my phone broke, and everyone goes, oh, that sucks. If they release 100 million iPhones to the public and 1% breaks, you got 1 million posts on Twitter of broken phones trending nationwide, and they're like, what is going on with these phones? What? But it's the same failure rate.
Yep.
So what happens when you have, let's say out of a society, you end up with like 0.0001% of people, or for every 100,000 people, you get one violent lunatic. As our population grows and expands, you start seeing more and more violent lunatics, Then they become groups of violent lunatics.
Yep.
Then they start going around smashing and destroying things.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Especially when you have an exploitation of these people for political gain. Yeah. So then you end up with establishment protection. So you have these people who are going around clearly unwell. You know, they're not all with it. And when they smash things up, they're called peaceful protesters. What I don't understand is it's helping Trump. Mm-hmm. The riots are good for Trump. It's bad for Biden. They try to hide it.
It's bad for Biden, but it's less bad for Trump. I don't think it's good for anybody.
No, I think it's good for Trump.
I mean, they're terrible for everybody right now. It seems like.
Politically, it's good for Trump.
Yeah.
Like, of course, riots are bad for everybody. But I'm saying in terms of politics, I know people who were hardcore Democrat, and then the riots hit their town, and they became Republicans. Not even Republicans. They still hate Republicans, but they're like, but we need Trump to do something about this.
Yesterday, Biden tweeted that, or someone tweeted with his account, that Trump is the reason for the economy falling apart.
That is the most ridiculous, grasping at straws thing.
Heck? That's amazing.
There are all these comments that were like, there's a pandemic, dude.
Yeah.
Bro.
Bro. Remember?
What's
Yeah, it's pandemic.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. And we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.